Okay, let's think about a figure who, well, really rose from relative obscurity, didn't he? From a Mediterranean island to basically redrawing the map of Europe. Today, we're plunging into the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. His story, drawn from this biography we're looking at, it just keeps fascinating people, sparking debate.
It really does. An incredible trajectory.
So our mission, if you like, for this deep dive is to try and understand what really drove his rise, the sheer impact he had on Europe, and also grapple with, well, the man himself, his character.
Which is full of contradictions.
Exactly. So let's start right at the beginning. Ajaccio, Corsica, 1769. This wasn't just any old-timer place, was it?
Oh, definitely not.
Yeah.
Corsica had only just been annexed by France, the year before Napoleon's birth.
Right.
So growing up there, he's navigating this sort of dual identity.
Corsican and French.
Right. And you have to wonder how that unique position...
Welcome to Influencers, the podcast where we dive into the lives, impact, and legacies of the people who shape our world. From historic figures who sparked revolutions to modern digital creators with millions of followers, we explore what makes someone truly influential and how their voice changed the way we think, act, and connect. Whether they moved nations or trended worldwide, this is where their stories unfold. I'm your host, Ashraf, and today, we're stepping into the world of influence, past and present.
might have fueled his ambition, maybe gave him this drive to prove himself on a much bigger stage.
And the source makes it clear this wasn't a life of luxury he was born into. Minor nobility, not much money. He wasn't exactly part of the established French elite.
Not at all. Limited financial resources.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, the biography mentions there were early signs of just how smart he was.
Remarkable intelligence, it says.
Yeah. And considering the family situation, modest means one of 8 kids spotting that potential and, getting him into military school.
Mm-hmm.
That was a big step.
A huge step. Sending him off to mainland France at just 9. That must have been incredibly difficult for a kid. Leaving home, new culture, and, as the biography points out, facing discrimination.
Oh.
People mocking his accent, looking down on his background.
He really speaks to his resilience, doesn't it?
It does. That he didn't just, survive that, but actually thrived.
Thrives is the right word. Despite all those challenges, he excelled. Graduating as an artillery officer from the École Militaire in Paris in '85, that's a top school.
A really prestigious place.
Yeah. So that graduation, it wasn't just an achievement. It was like the launch pad for everything that followed.
And then, boom, 1789, the French Revolution. It's almost like history just opened a door for someone exactly like him.
It absolutely acted as a catalyst. The old order was breaking down, and suddenly there was this huge need for military talent, for leadership.
And pathways to power just appeared that wouldn't have existed before.
Precisely. He initially lined up with the revolutionary ideas and the chaos, the upheaval. It created fertile ground for his skills and, let's be honest, his ambition.
And he certainly didn't waste time seizing opportunities. That defense of Toulon in '93 against the British, the biography calls this his first really big win.
Yeah, that seems to be the moment he first really showed what he could do as a commander.
Right.
Toulon was pivotal. His success there, it showcased his tactical thinking, his leadership, led to quick promotion, got him noticed. It put him on a completely different level.
But it feels like the Italian campaigns, starting around 1796, that's what really cemented his, legendary status.
Oh, definitely. The biography really highlights his strategic genius there, but also his charisma. It wasn't just about winning battles.
No.
It was about how he won them and how he inspired incredible loyalty in his troops, achieving these really decisive victories against Austria.
Right. He consistently outsmarted them, used innovative tactics.
Exactly. And he knew how to connect with his soldiers, those stirring speeches. These wins didn't just gain territory for France. They turned Napoleon into a national hero.
Yeah.
Huge popularity, massive influence.
So you got these massive victories, France getting stronger, and Napoleon becoming this, icon. You can see how that popularity combined with military power could pave the way for a political move. Which brings us to the coup d'etat in 1799. Getting rid of the Directory, setting himself up as first consul, that was audacious.
It was incredibly bold, a real power grab.
Yeah.
But it was driven by, his popularity, yes, but also the fact that the Directory was pretty unstable. And his own ambition, of course.
He basically just took control.
He did. effectively seized the government. And that really marks the end of the revolution proper and the beginning of his personal rule.
And then, just a few years later, first consul isn't enough. He becomes emperor. That coronation in 1804, the biography emphasizes the symbolism, reshaping Europe, French dominance. It's kind of staggering.
It was a very clear signal of his ultimate goal. He wasn't just leading a republic anymore. He was creating a new imperial order centered on France. And this vision was backed up by some major reforms he pushed through.
Okay, let's talk about those reforms. The Napoleonic Code is probably the most famous.
Yeah, hugely influential.
A single legal system, equality before the law, property rights, secular government. The biography notes its global impact. It's amazing how those ideas still resonate.
They really do. Think about how radical equality before the law was then, challenging centuries of feudal privilege.
Right, it wasn't just for France. It spread, became a model elsewhere. Prussia, parts of Italy, even influenced law far beyond Europe.
Its clarity, its uniformity, it was revolutionary for the time, and its influence on civil law systems is just undeniable, lasting centuries.
And it wasn't only laws, was it? The biography mentions economic reforms, too. Big infrastructure projects, centralizing the administration. It sounds like he was really trying to build a stronger France from the ground up.
Oh, absolutely. He knew military power needed a solid foundation. So better roads, canals, a more efficient government structure, it all helped create a more modern, unified state.
Which, in turn, probably supported his military ambitions.
Exactly. These domestic reforms were crucial for projecting French power across the continent.
And project power he did. His time as emperor is just dominated by these relentless military campaigns, isn't it?
Constantly. Expanding the empire, fighting coalition after coalition led by Britain, Prussia, Austria, Russia.
The Battle of Austerlitz, 1805, gets a specific mention in the source as, like, the peak of his tactical genius.
Austerlitz is often seen that way, yes.
Yeah.
A masterpiece of strategy. His ability to read the battlefield, to execute these really complex maneuvers, was extraordinary.
But all that constant war
Came at a terrible cost. Human lives, economic strain across the board.
and eventually that drive, that expansion, it led to him pushing too far, didn't it? The biography points to the invasion of Russia in 1812 as the big turning point.
Yeah, the Russian campaign was just catastrophic, utterly disastrous.
The scale of it, the Russian winter, their scorched earth tactics.
It just decimated his army, the Grande Armée.
Yeah.
And that huge loss, it weakened him massively and really emboldened his enemies. Other European powers saw their chance.
Stronger coalitions formed against him then.
Exactly, which led to the defeat in 1814. He was forced to abdicate and sent into exile on Elba. It's quite a fall from grace.
From emperor of most of Europe to ruler of a tiny island, it seems unbelievable.
It really shows how fragile that kind of power can be, especially when you overreach. But even then,
It wasn't over.
no. Incredibly, he makes this daring return in 1815, the 100 Days. It just speaks volumes about his charisma, his ambition.
But that comeback was cut short, wasn't it? The final showdown at Waterloo, British and Prussian forces.
Waterloo was the end, the definitive defeat. No more comebacks after that.
And then the second exile, St. Helena, much further away, much more final.
Way out in the South Atlantic. A remote, isolated confinement.
And those last years there, dictating his memoirs. Just imagine him looking back on that life.
Must have been extraordinary reflections.
The biography also touches on the debate about his death in 1821. Stomach cancer, arsenic poisoning, still argued about.
It is, and that little bit of mystery just adds to the whole enduring fascination with him, doesn't it?
It really does. Which brings us to his legacy. As the biography states, it's just incredibly complex, polarizing even.
Very polarizing. Visionary reformer on one hand, modernizing France, spreading ideas like the Code.
But on the other hand,
An authoritarian ruler whose ambition fueled devastating continent-wide wars.
it's hard to square those two sides sometimes.
That tension is key. He absolutely brought significant reforms, especially in law and how the state was run, lasting impact.
No doubt.
But the cost of his military campaigns, the sheer scale of the conflict and suffering, it was immense. And ironically, his efforts to dominate Europe actually ended up fueling nationalism against France in many places.
That's a fascinating point. By trying to impose French rule, he inadvertently helped other nations define themselves in opposition.
Precisely.
It really underscores those bigger themes the biography touches on. Ambition, leadership, and, well, hubris. Maybe a cautionary tale.
In many ways, yes. It raises big questions about ambition. about what happens when immense power meets absolute self-belief. The fact we're still so fascinated by him shows the scale of his impact and those contradictions in his character.
And the biography even gives us a couple of his quotes. Impossible is a word only found in the dictionary of fools.
Classic Napoleon.
And victory belongs to the most persevering.
They really capture that mindset, don't they? That relentless drive. They absolutely do. That unwavering self-confidence. Though it's always important to remember the context, the consequences of that drive.
So wrapping up this deep dive, we followed Napoleon from Corsica, his incredible rise, ruling Europe,
Through his major achievements, the reforms, the wars.
to his ultimate downfall and exile. It's a story packed with genius, tragedy, ambition.
And its limits.
Definitely its limits. It leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How can one person's drive achieve so much progress, yet also cause so much destruction?
It's a fundamental question. What lessons are there in his life about power, about its allure, its dangers?
It's certainly something for you to think about. What part of Napoleon's huge, complicated story resonates most with you, and why. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.